wanted to fly in space? Here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, this is the kind of tool they use to train astronauts to fly up to the space station. And it's not as easy as it looks. I'm Bob McDonald. So keep your heads up, because we're going to orbit. Flying in space looks like so much fun. You're floating weightless as you zoom around the Earth. You look out the window at our beautiful blue planet hundreds of kilometers below. But before you get to go up there, you have to learn how to do it down here on the ground. If you want to become an astronaut, this is where you learn how to fly in space. The Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas is where all astronauts come to learn how to fly the shuttle, how to do spacewalks, how to operate all the equipment on the International Space Station. The experience here is as close to the real thing as you can possibly get. It takes a lot of work before you get to fly into space, and a special type of person to do it.
There's more than one way to get there. And when people say, well, in order to be an astronaut, I have to study science, and oh, that's really complicated, or what science, the myth about it is that it's one topic. It isn't. It's several hundred topics. Science, you can do microbiology like you can do astrophysics. In science, you can do chemistry like you can do engineering and construct bridges and roads and things like that. It's completely different. I chose a field that was computer-oriented, and I didn't have to do any other types of science in order to be specialized in the field. So in order to become an astronaut, you need to have a technical background. And then the rest is really to shine somehow as a person who likes to do things and accomplish things. And we all do. So what we suggest that people do, or young people do, is to find out what they like, find their way, and then go and strive for excellence in that, whatever it is.
After years of serious training and studying, the ultimate moment for all astronauts is when they finally get to go. And once they're up there, all that hard work suddenly turns into fun.
You're in a rocket ship that is sitting on its back. The space shuttle lands like an airplane. You're sitting in your chair, just like landing on Air Canada. But for launch, you're in that same seat pointed at the sky. So you're sitting on your back with your knees up above your head. And it's a complicated ship, so you have to crawl into it on your hands and knees. The back wall is your floor as you climb up into your chair. Get yourself, someone helps you get all strapped in, onto your back, and then they slowly get all their gear out of the ship, close the hatch, and then you have 3 hours or so waiting while they do pressure checks and systems checks. You're sitting on your back for hours. Then as you get closer and closer, more things are coming alive. The spaceship's getting ready, starting to rumble and shake underneath you a little bit. Final few seconds, the engines start to light. The vehicle really hammers around when the engines light because all that fuel starts to burn out the back. And then at the moment zero, when you're ready to go to space, there's this huge amount of power. It's like you're in a building where there was a huge explosion on the first floor. There's violent shaking, and then you look out the window and the launch pad starts disappearing out the window, and you're going, and the shuttle turns to line up with the space station orbit, and off you go. You start getting squished into your chair as the shuttle accelerates up. The sky starts going from light blue to dark blue to black as you drive up into it. After 2 minutes, you're above the air. The solid rockets explode off, and suddenly the ride kind of smooths out. But then you've got to get fast enough to stay in orbit, so it starts accelerating faster and faster. You get squished heavier and heavier into your chair until you're 3 times your own weight, wearing all this gear for minute after minute, like some giant has been standing on your chest the whole time. And then suddenly, after 8.5 minutes, the engines shut off, and you're weightless. It's just an instantaneous transition like that. It's hard to believe it's happening. You're watching all your systems and your gauges, and suddenly this huge weight gorilla that's been jumping up and down on your chest suddenly picks you up and throws you off a cliff, and you're weightless, floating in space. It's an amazing transition.
Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield knows all about flying in space. He's done it twice, and he's the only Canadian to step outside the shuttle and do a spacewalk. He's one of 7 Canadians who've flown in space, something they've all wanted to do since they were kids. In space, every day is a sports day because everything is floating weightless all the time.
Imagine yourself sitting in a room with a bunch of friends and suddenly gravity went away. You'd all start floating around and your chips would go floating around and your necklace come floating up in front of your face. Everyone laughs at first because it's so funny. It's just everything changed all of a sudden for what looks like no good reason. Initially, of course, in the shuttle, you got all kinds of stuff to do right away, so you're very busy. You don't have time to play. But later on, when things are a little more relaxed, you play with weightlessness all the time. Whenever you're going to give somebody something, you just float it to them and it tumbles through space. Or when you're talking to somebody, you just bounce off the floor and bounce off the ceiling, back and forth. It's a constant toy to play with weightlessness.
Now, when you see astronauts in space, it looks like they're floating. It almost looks like there's no gravity. But actually, there's almost as much gravity in space as there is down here on Earth. The reason they're floating is because they're always falling. Now, anything that falls is weightless. Like if you throw a ball up in the air, as long as it's in the air, it's weightless. And the neat thing about gravity is that all objects fall at the same speed. Now, here on Earth, we can only experience weightlessness for a few seconds, like this. I'm weightless! But the effect is still the same. While falling, all objects have no weight and fall together. So, taking a flight in a rocket is like taking a really, really high dive. And Hamish can demonstrate this a lot better than I can. A rocket leaps off the ground, shooting very high above the Earth. Once it reaches space, the engines are turned off and it begins to fall. Now, when anything falls, it usually follows a curved path in the air. Down here on Earth, that curve is pretty sharp, and it aims the falling object towards the ground, where it always hits a few seconds later. The trick to spaceflight is to go fast enough so that the curve you make when you're falling is the same as the curve of the Earth itself. Now, you have to go pretty fast to do this, about, 30,000 kilometers an hour. But if you can get up to that magic speed, you will fall continuously all the way around the Earth without hitting it at all. That's called an orbit. But actually, you and your rocket are just falling. Imagine leaping off a diving board, and just before you hit the water, the pool disappears, and you just keep falling and falling and falling. So that's what spaceflight feels like, falling all the time. Except the trick in spaceflight is to throw yourself high enough and far enough so that when you fall, you miss the Earth. Imagine doing that for a week. So it really doesn't matter what you do in space. Everything feels like sport. Weightlessness is not only fun, it makes work easier because you can handle large objects like you have super strength. But it also means that even ordinary things like having dinner take on a new form when you're floating.
This is the whole kitchen right here. It's called the galley, and this is where we are going to put water into our food. You can choose hot or cold water right here, and this is the oven.
Wow.
That's where we
Microwave?
warm our food up. No. Okay, so first thing I have to do is turn the stove on. So I'm gonna fire up all the buttons here on it. It's gonna be noisy. So now we've got the water being heated up, we've got the oven on, and now we'll turn on the fan in the oven.
Wow. Why so many moving parts?
Well, without gravity, of course, you need to force all these things around. Hot air doesn't rise, hot water doesn't rise. You need to have pumps to move all this stuff around. Now, what do you want? Tropical punch or orange juice?
Tropical punch.
Tropical punch,
But
okay?
why is it in a package like that?
Well, you have to have it's sealed. You can't just sprinkle stuff without gravity, and so everything's pre-measured, pre-packaged, dried, sealed. It tells us instructions on it. It says when it was made, of course, but then it says 250 milliliters cold water, 2 to 5 minutes to let it mix up. So, in this case, I'm going to convert that. We're going to put it on. You want it hot or cold?
Cold.
Cold. Okay. So we put it on here, and there's a needle in here that's going to inject the water into the pouch. So I'm carefully sliding it over the needle. It's quiet now because it's ready to pump. Okay, I'm going to dial up the right amount of water. We'll put in about 6 ounces, and we can get hot or cold. You can push cold. Go ahead.
Push cold?
Push
Okay.
the cold button. Okay, watch carefully, and it's now going to inject the right amount of water.
It's amazing how complicated this is the equivalent of filling up a glass of water.
Filling up a glass of water, but without gravity, you can't have it in a glass. The water just floats around in a big ball in the shuttle when it's outside the container. So if you spill it, now you've got to figure out how to drink it out of that bag.
Yeah, it doesn't, nothing comes out.
Nothing comes out. So we have a straw, but if you just stuck a straw in there, then of course it would all come oozing out the straw or squirt all over the place. So you need a straw that you can turn on and off. When you're ready to drink, here's what you're going to do. You're going to pop this open. You're going to squeeze that little thing so you have a nice open straw, and then you're ready to drink. Assume the straw works. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so that's how it's going to work. So go ahead.
So when I squeeze this, the straw is off.
Yeah, but you want to put it in your mouth first, because if you open it, you'll be squirting all over the place. Put it in your mouth. Pop this thing open. Yeah, carefully. You're going to now tip it up. Tip it up so you get it in the right. There you go. You're drinking tropical punch in space. And it's okay. Okay, it's all right. All right, let's see how the dinner's coming.
Wow, that was good.
Beef tips with mushrooms. You want to open it very carefully. Scissors are your best friend in space.
Okay.
Now, you don't want to cut everything and leave it loose because it'll float all over the place. So you just cut it enough that you can get in at what you're going to be eating. You see, there's some lovely looking beef tips with mushrooms in there.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't really need a knife because you're not going to lay something out on a plate to cut up. Everything sort of has to be pre-cut in your container.
Oh, so you eat it in the bag.
So you just eat everything out of a bag. It's like you're on a camping trip. It'll fly all over the place. Everything has to be sauce stuck to the container. But when you're ready for your beef tips, well, they're not bad.
That's dinner in space.
Dinner in space, granola bar for dessert.
Of course, after dinner, there's one other activity everyone has to do in space, and I'm sure you're wondering about it. Okay, everybody wants to know, how do you go to the bathroom in space?
On Earth, everything's pulled away from your body with gravity. So you don't really have to think about it. When you have to go to the bathroom, you sit in the toilet, everything falls into the toilet. Well, in space, of course, everything would float. So in the place of gravity, we use airflow. And so when you sit in the toilet here, your urine is pulled into this tube. It has a special adapter for each person on the crew. And you sit on here for the rest of it, and air pulls everything down into the toilet. There's a checklist that you have to use. Urine collection, urine and feces collection, it's all right here. And some maintenance for the toilet when you're done, but you want to make sure you don't want to miss a step. It can be really important. So you sit yourself down in the toilet. You pull these over your legs like a seatbelt because you don't want to float away halfway through. You make sure you turn everything on. When you're finally all finished, then all of your wet wipes and everything along here, you wear gloves, keep everything hygienic. At the end, you get everything all cleaned up, all put away. And when you want to wash up, of course, you can, these are no lint towels because you don't want lint floating everywhere. Then you need to hang these up to dry afterwards. And so you have a nice cloth rack over here, color-coded for each one of the crew members. There's privacy curtains across, and we all take turns.
How does it actually flush?
It doesn't flush. It has a continual flow of air down inside. And of course, if you just stored the stuff that came out of your body, it would smell bad and it would cause a health hazard. So once you're finished and you close this up, we actually expose what came out of your body to vacuum, so that with the air gone and exposed to vacuum, it kills all the bacteria and sort of freeze dries whatever in there. So that way it stays hygienic.
But you're not throwing it out into space?
No, we don't throw anything out into space. We throw liquids out into space. We throw the humidity and the urine and the collected sweat and everything. We can vent that out into space because it immediately evaporates. But you wouldn't want to throw any solids out because it would become space debris.
The biggest place to go in space is the International Space Station. It's currently under construction in orbit. Already it's about the size of a 10-story building, and it's only about half finished. It's just the latest of many space stations that have been built in orbit, such as the Russian space station Mir. One problem with the design of these early stations was the confusing sense of up and down when you're inside. One of the things you have to get used to when you're flying in space is the fact that up and down go away. You can make up in any direction you want because you're just floating around. And inside this early space station called Skylab, that was a big problem because all the rooms faced in different directions. Let's go from this big room into the smaller living and working quarters. And you can see in here, there are people all the way around. Over here's a guy taking a shower. He's facing one way. If we move up, we see another guy working at a scientific laboratory. He's facing in a different direction. And we keep coming around. We see there's another room, another laboratory. That's actually the bathroom over there. And then finally, you come down here to the bedroom. And you can sleep here facing in any direction you like, maybe this way or maybe that way. The Mir space station had the same problem. Every room faced a different direction, and some people felt very disoriented that way. The new International Space Station solved this by making all the modules face the same direction. Canadian astronaut Dave Williams took me on a tour of the space station simulator in Houston. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Bob. It's a real pleasure having you here.
Yeah, so can we actually go inside this thing?
We
and have
can.
a look around? Okay,
Yes.
let's do that.
After you.
Thank you. It's a lot bigger than I thought.
It is. It's pretty incredible. And of course, in space, we'd be outside doing a spacewalk, and we'd have to go in through the airlock instead of coming in the front. Well, here we are, Bob. We're floating through into the lab. And of course, this is one of the areas on board where we're going to be doing scientific research. International Space Station is a great operating laboratory for us to understand how humans adapt to being in space.
It's quite large. There's quite a bit of room. It's got handholds there. Is that what these are?
These are. And you know, of course, if we were in space right now, there is no up, there is no down. So you could hang out up here, you could float around down there, looking out this window down at the Earth below us. Absolutely incredible. Get a chance to see the Earth going by at 25 times the speed of sound, sunrise and a sunset every 45 minutes. And of course, here we're very proud of the control center for the Canadarm2, the space station robotic manipulator system.
This is where you actually control it with the joysticks?
That's right. Yeah, we'd hold on to one of these and the other one using the translation hand controller to move the end of the robotic arm around. So this is a really exciting piece of hardware, and of course we're looking forward to the future, being able to get the next phase of Canadian robotics up in space.
So here's Canada's contribution right here. There we are. Canada in space right here.
So we can float further back, and one of the interesting things about the space station, of course, is we have signs to help us get around in space, knowing where to go. This is, of course, exit. And this way. You know, yeah, I think a lot of that is related to the mock-ups here on the ground, but certainly to the node and heading over this way and telling you where port is and where starboard is, always keeping the crew members oriented when they're floating through all these various modules. So, now here, this connects us over to the airlock on the starboard side of the space station. And of course, the airlock is where we'd go outside if we were doing spacewalks.
I noticed that everything is up, though, inside the space station. All the up is the same in all the modules.
That's right.
Is that done on purpose?
That is done on purpose. And then one of the other things here on Earth, gravity gives us a strong cue. But in space, how would we decide where up and down is? Well, we can float over here, and we look at these patches. And you know, up tends to be where your head is. So you would read these patches and you would then conclude that, well, up is up here, because to read them, you have to orient your body that way. But you could just as easily then flip around upside down, if you will, and float down into the FGB, and it wouldn't really matter because, of course, up is totally relative in space.
Okay, so next module.
Why don't we float on back? We'll float on back to the FGB now. We'll dive through the hatch. Much easier to do in space.
I really wish we were in space doing this tour, you know? Living in space does look like fun, but there's still a lot of work to do, especially the construction of the station itself. Chris Hadfield put on his construction hard hat and went outside to install Canada's contribution to the space station, the new Canadarm2.
You're wearing this suit of clothes. It's almost like wearing your own little spaceship, all by yourself. You even have a thruster system on your back. So you're wearing a little one-person spaceship. And so you weigh about 3 times as much. Even though you're weightless, you still have to move all that mass around. But because you're being held up by the weightlessness, you can float yourself around with your fingertips, and you become so delicate and precise. You just get a little motion going and your body starts rotating into the new position. It's like a big elephant ballet up there as you move your body around. But then when you want to work on something, it's time to get a tool out. You need to either get your hand held really solid and drive your tool, because if you just grab the tool, you'll spin. The space station's not going to turn, and you'll spin around it. So you get your hand held on to drive your big power tool, or you can attach your suit to something so you can free up both hands, or we have places to click our feet into so that you get both feet locked, and then you can work almost like you're standing on the Earth.
Of course, all journeys must come to an end. But even coming back to Earth on the space shuttle is an adventure.
It's so amazing that we don't think much about the actual risk involved at certain parts of the flight, like going up to space, coming back down into the atmosphere. I remember very well being just behind the pilot during re-entry into the atmosphere and watching the spectacle that was happening outside, which is the space shuttle making friction with the upper layers of the atmosphere and basically igniting the hot gases there, and it feels like we're in a ball of fire. But you don't think then that it's 6,000 degrees out there necessarily, and that if you were to go out you'd die. You don't think about these things because you marvel about the technology of humans that brought people outside the gravity of Earth and then back in safely. And 500 years from now, we'll probably have people that will look back at what we did in the 1960s and 1990 and 2000. And they will probably smile a little, thinking how primitive we were in spaceflight at the time.
Astronauts make spaceflight look easy. But some say that after returning to Earth, getting used to gravity again is just as confusing as going up in the first place.
So I was amazed to see that after 10 days in space, my body had almost forgotten what gravity felt like. And as we came back down in the space shuttle and started feeling gravity. And as you come back down, that gravity doesn't come like, and then whoops, you're in gravity. It's just a very slow onset. You start feeling a little heavier and a little heavier. And you can see the G-meter, which tells you how much gravity compared to normal gravity of Earth you are. And you're only at 0.1 or 0.2, which is 20% of what it's supposed to be. And you already think, oh man, this is very heavy. I don't want to go anymore.
There's a funny thing that happens to astronauts when they get into space. They look different. Their faces change so much, sometimes they don't even recognize themselves in a mirror. And that's because all the fluids that are inside their bodies are not being pulled downward by gravity like happens here on the Earth. So all those fluids rise upwards towards their chest and their face, and they get a condition called puffy face. So if you want to know what your space face looks like, all you have to do is look at yourself in a mirror while you're standing on your head. And we have some volunteers here who have given their time to stand on their heads. All right, everybody, on your heads. And let's compare what they look like when they're upside down compared to when they're right side up. That's your space face. And yes, I did it too. The only other world astronauts have ever visited is the moon. 12 people walked on the moon in the late 1960s and early 70s during the Apollo missions. Hopping around in the moon's low gravity, the astronauts felt 6 times lighter than they did on Earth. The moon has no air, so the sky's always black, even in the daytime. It's a fun place to visit, but you can't go anywhere on the moon without wearing a spacesuit. It was also the first time that humans got to see the Earth in the sky above another landscape. A beautiful but tiny world. If you want to experience some of the same training astronauts go through, you can visit Space Camp, like this one in Laval, Quebec. You can become an astronaut in the shuttle, experience a spacewalk, a walk on the moon, or work in mission control. While you're waiting to become an astronaut, there is a way that you can see spacecraft with people in them passing overhead from the ground, even in your backyard. The best one to see is the International Space Station. It goes around the world every 90 minutes, and it passes over all the major cities in North America. But if you want to see it, you have to know when to look and where to look. And the best way to do that is to go on the internet, go to the main NASA webpage, look for Humans in Space, and you'll see a link that says International Space Station, how to find it. And there's a lovely list in here. It says sightings by city. And I notice here that it's got all the cities in North America. There's Toronto, where I live, but tonight I happen to be in Vancouver. And when you click on whatever city it is, it will give you the next 3 times that the space station is going to pass over. It'll give you the date and the time and where to look. And the thing to look for is the maximum duration. That's the maximum amount of time you're going to see it passing through space and where it's going to appear and disappear. So it'll say, in this case, tonight it's going to appear over the south-southeast and it's going to disappear over the east-southeast. So it's going to go there across the sky like this and like that, and it's going to happen at 8:39 p.m. That means that we have to be there at exactly that time, and I noticed that it is actually happening tonight, so the kids are going to go out and try to spot it. We have to find those directions in the sky, and I have a compass here, and here's how you do it. This compass has an arrow that points you in the direction you want to go. So let's dial up. Here's south, and there's east, right? Okay, so south-southeast is sort of like that. Now, we have to turn our bodies until the compass needle lines up with that thing, so it's going to be, nope, this way. There. Okay, so there's the point in the sky where it's going to appear, and then where was it going to leave?
East-southeast.
East-southeast. Okay, so we'll dial that up on our compass here, and then turn our bodies again, and it's going to be that way. Okay, so it's going to appear there, and it's going to go there, and it's going to go just across the sky like that. So keep your eye out. Keep watching, okay? It should be here any second. Just keep an eye out for it. It's going to be a really bright dot in the sky.
I see it.
Where? Where?
Right there.
Oh, yeah, look. It's a really bright light. See it? It's moving. It's moving. It looks like an airplane, but it's brighter. There are people living in that thing looking down at us right now. So you can do this. If you just come out at the right time, we're just going to see it for another minute or so going by the sky. And that's the International Space Station passing over. So remember, if you want to be an astronaut, just keep your heads up.